Hi guys, good morning. My name is Paul Smith. I'm your facilitator for Unit 1. I'm a teacher at LC Burt High School and a We the People teacher as well, so glad to be with you today. With that, I'll turn it over to your judges.
Please be seated. Good morning. We're your judges for this session. My name is Tim Isaacs. I am with the Center for Teaching the Rule of Law at Roanoke College.
I'm Laura Bleed. I'm a law student at William & Mary Law School, and I'm also a We the People alumni, so I'm excited to be back with you.
And Clive Hallman, Professor Emeritus of History, James Madison University.
I will read your question and the two sub-questions, and when I'm finished, I will let you do your response. Most nations, I'm sorry, introduce yourself. It's the second time I've done this. It was a long day yesterday.
He's just so excited.
I'm Antonio Conti and I'm in the 8th grade.
My name is Madison Fuentes and I am in the 8th grade also.
I'm Josh Buckley and I'm in the 8th grade.
My name is Morgan Campbell. I'm in the 8th grade and Mrs. Hahn is our teacher.
Okay. Take a deep breath. Exhale. And relax. Most nations have a constitution, but they do not have constitutional governments. How might people organize a constitutional government to prevent the abuse of power? Give an example of a nation in today's world that you think is not a constitutional government. Give reasons for your choice.
A major problem that the Founding Fathers had while forming a constitutional government was keeping the abuse of power away from potential tyrants or dictators. Cheaters will not play fair and therefore leave the honest at the disadvantage. They came up with many suggestions, all germane to keep the fledgling country from becoming a monarchy, and thus creating such bollocks from which they were trying to escape. One must be very careful with constitutionalism, because the very essence of it is the control of power. While the 52 Christians and 3 deists who drafted our Constitution had varying opinions, they all had common ground. In order to have common ground, there must be common standard with no need to compromise on principles, but on details.
Thankfully, the Founding Fathers had something to model their hybrid government after. They were aware of what dictatorships, monarchies, oligarchies, and democracies were, but they wanted to combine some of everything. Senate would represent oligarchy and was set up for the wealthy. The House of Representatives represented democracy and was set up for the common people. And the president himself would stand for monarchy. The use of checks and balances and the drafting of Constitution were ingenious. They purposely made the passing of bills and amendments so long and tedious because they knew mistakes could be made if it was easy and fast. The thought process of these men were efficient, effective, and enduring.
While the Founding Fathers had good ideas, there are some suggestions that might help strengthen the prevention of abuse. The following contains other suggestions that could nip whether it be anarchy or, on the other extreme, autocracy in the bud.
Those associated with being part of a country should at least be those who are interested in the concerns of the people and not for their own selfish desires. Another would be collaboration with other interested parties. Major drawbacks in politics are the ignorance, inconsideration, and refusal to acknowledge another's belief system. Regardless of whether or not that belief is true, it should still be recognized and respected. Also, the availability of equal representation for the people despite race, religion, wealth, gender, and in particular, socioeconomic status is essential to the process of creating a constitutional government. This discrimination between classes is an extremely controversial issue that understandably enrages many. If one can break this barrier, a flood of diverse views can form a whole new perspective from different worldviews, walks of life, and opinions. Without a constitutional government, governing the people is made harder and further complicates even the simplest of affairs. A common misconception is that if a country has a constitution, therefore it is a constitutional government. This is an incorrect statement. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, a Constitution is a legal instrument or merely a set of fixed norms or principles generally accepted as the fundamental law of the polity, that effectively it controls the exercise of political power. Many countries have both unofficial and official constitutions, but that does not make it a constitutional government. An example would be the United Kingdom. While there is no constitutional government, they do have constitutional documents such as the Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, and the Reform Act. China, although it has its own constitution, is the complete opposite of a constitutional government. It is communist. While our constitution and government do not bestow the unalienable and natural rights given to us by the Creator, it protects them. It is not our government that has its flaws, but the Arab people. The future generation must attack these problems head-on in order to prevent the problems their forefathers faced. After all, isn't that an
Time.
important reason?
Can repeat your thought?
After all, isn't that an important reason of learning history?
Thank you. All right, now we're going to spend some time asking you some questions, and then we'll do a very short little assessment. Laura?
Sure. At the end of your comments, you just mentioned that an effective constitutional government protects our inalienable and natural rights, I think was your quote. And I was wondering if you could tell me how our government, our constitutional government, protects those rights and what some of those rights are.
The unalienable rights, as mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, would be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Along with when the Founding Fathers created the Constitution, they also added the Bill of Rights, which gave us our freedom of speech, freedom of press, and the such. So they gladly will protect our rights.
You mentioned earlier about trying to find my note. The essentials for a good government are that it should provide opportunities for a diverse citizenry in terms of participation. Question. We have become a nation that is very diverse economically. So how should the government deal with that? Should we redistribute the wealth to take care of those who can't take care of themselves? What's the role of the government in taking care of people from diverse political backgrounds, social backgrounds, economic backgrounds, ethnic, racial backgrounds, religious backgrounds? How do we handle all this diversity?
There needs to be a system where it is good that they are helping the people, but at the same time, some of their things are becoming rather taking away from people who actually earn their living, as in people should still be able to have their wealth because they've earned it, but their wealth should not be taken away for people who quote unquote aren't able to, because if that happens, they should at least give a certain type of standard for people who are not able to. Otherwise, they are just giving the people who aren't working the workers' money.
Then I'm going to ask one follow-up question, and I'll step back. Can a constitutional government like ours be all things to all people? Constitutionally speaking, can we be all things to all people as we grow more diverse and more pluralistic?
Could you clarify the question?
Sure. How does a constitutional government like ours meet the needs of such a diverse population without just simply collapsing under the weight of what it's trying to do?
We have to work together as one, as a nation, and teamwork, as you could say. It's really simple. But working together, it really helps strengthen.
I agree, because in order to provide for the people, we must know who the people are, and we need representation for all the different types of people, race, religion, social, political party, and everything. Whether, like I said, whether it is right or not, their voices still should be heard, because that is what makes America so great, is that everyone gets to have a say in their life.
Can you think of a time in our history when the federal government went beyond the limitations placed on it? And how was the situation handled? And explain that just a little bit. Do you understand the question? Has there ever been a time when these rights you were talking about the government has placed limitations on it? And why did they do that?
Well, during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln broke habeas corpus, so such as that. And they pretty much covered it up. It was not very constitutional, breaking habeas corpus, but since Abraham Lincoln has the image he has today, it was handled rather secretively and covertly.
Can you think of another example?
The Louisiana Purchase can also be considered unconstitutional, as Thomas Jefferson did not know whether, when he bought that land, if the inhabitants of that land, if they would become citizens or if they wouldn't. And he basically just ignored that and went ahead and bought the land because he was afraid.
Time.
Let me finish.
Because he was afraid that Napoleon would stop offering it.
And think about World War II.
Okay. Laura, you want to start with your comments?
Well, thank you so much for your preparation and hard work. I can tell you've been studying hard. I really enjoyed your opening remarks and the question and answer period. Madison, you hit the nail on the head when I asked the question about natural rights and where we can find them in our government. You told me the two places that they're most importantly embodied, and I was very impressed by how quickly you were able to come up with that answer. So good job.
Also, I think that one of you mentioned teamwork, and I think you work well as a team. I would like to see a little more eye contact instead of reading, but I know it's tough. You've got, a bucket full of stuff that you've got to absorb, and trying to remember all of that's very hard. I have trouble remembering my phone number some days. But Madison, you made two key points to the question I addressed, and these are crucial, and I bring these up for all of you and everybody in this room. If democracy, if a liberal democracy under a constitution such as we have is going to work, two things must happen, and the founders of this nation understood this, and I think you understand it, and you need to pass it on. One, the voice of the people must be heard. The Constitution is the voice of a higher law. That higher law is the rule of law, and it comes from the people. And any democracy, any constitution is built on compromise. And that's what we need today to break the log jam that we face in our congressional halls and our state legislatures. And that's not a political statement, that's just simply an observation. So I think those two things are critical in talking about constitutional governments that work. The people are heard, they have a voice, and they are willing to compromise on the issues.
It's very obvious that you people did a lot of work on this, and I was very impressed with that. You thought about Lincoln and the Civil War. You know something. Thank you very much for a good presentation.